Kira, and today I'm coming at you with an absolutely massive book haul. So basically, at the beginning of July, I graduated from university, and so I decided to buy myself a few books as a little graduation present. But I kind of got a little bit out of control, and those few books turned into a few more books, and then a few more books after that, and I ended up with an absolutely ridiculous pile of books in a pretty short space of time. So because I've got so many books to talk about today, I should probably just get on with the haul. So the first couple of books that I decided to pick up were the 20th anniversary editions of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, both in the Slytherin editions, because I think they look absolutely gorgeous. So actually, up until now, I'd never read Harry Potter, which I know is really bad, and I'm also not quite sure why, because I absolutely love the films, so I decided after seeing these absolutely gorgeous covers to finally get around to reading the books. So pretty much straight after buying the books, I read The Philosopher's Stone and absolutely loved it. I flew through it, and I've now set myself the challenge of reading all of the books in the series before the end of 2018. So I'm going to be tackling Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets in the Booktubeathon and making my way through the rest of the books throughout the year. So on the subject of Harry Potter, because I picked up the first two books, I then decided to pick up The Prisoner of Azkaban, which after Booktubeathon I'm going to be bringing with me on holiday and reading while I'm abroad over summer. So the 20th anniversary editions were only available so far in the first two books in the series, so I had to buy The Prisoner of Azkaban in another edition, but it still looks absolutely gorgeous. It's all green on the front, and then the back is like an absolutely amazing purpley pink, which I think looks amazing. And I think I'll probably be buying all of the other books in these editions as well, because I think they look really cool. So as I said, I'm going to be reading the Chamber of Secrets next throughout the Booktubeathon, and then getting through The Prisoner of Azkaban, which I'm really excited about. So the next book that I picked up was this absolutely beautiful edition of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, which, if I'm being totally honest, I was completely drawn to because as a tea addict, I just couldn't resist picking up a book which had a cup of tea on the front of it, which just looked so pretty, and I just think it looks amazing. It's probably one of the most beautiful books I own at the moment. I also wanted to pick this up because I recently read Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen and really loved it. I'd also read Persuasion a while ago, and I've been meaning to get around to some more Jane Austen novels, and with a cover this beautiful, I thought Sense and Sensibility would be the perfect one to get to next. So in the Penguin Classics Deluxe editions, I also decided to pick up a copy of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is one of my all-time favourites. This was actually the first sort of gothic classic that I read, and it really got me into the genre, and they're now some of my favourite books to read. So I just had to pick up this beautiful copy when I saw it, particularly because the copy of Dracula that I originally owned and read when I was maybe like 15 came with me on holiday and got a little bit water damaged, and so I was definitely due a new edition that isn't so tatty. And this cover is absolutely magnificent. I'm probably going to be rereading this book when it comes to autumn time because vampires are the perfect read for Halloween, I think. So the next book that I picked up was Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell, and this book is the first Rainbow Rowell that I'm going to be coming to, and I feel like I'm a little bit behind on that one because everyone says her novels are amazing, so I thought it was about time to pick one up, and I thought this one would be a perfect one to start with. It sounds like a really nice story about sort of young love and meeting your sort of first love. I also think the cover is absolutely gorgeous, really simple, but it just sort of, I don't know, I just really liked it and thought it would be the perfect Rainbow Rowell book to start with. So I'm really excited to finally get around to reading an author that everyone has so much great things to say about. So the next book that I picked up is one that I'm super excited to read, and that is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. So I'm really excited about this one because it sounds like a YA dystopian set in a society where you find out 24 hours before you're going to die, and then you have the opportunity to meet other people who are in that same position. So this book follows two people who have used an app to meet each other 24 hours before they're about to pass away. I'm a huge fan of dystopians, although up until now I've mostly stuck to sort of adult and classic dystopians. So I'm really excited to see how a YA author deals with dystopians, and it just sounds super interesting, and I'm really excited to give it a read and see what I think. So the next book that I picked up is one that I've been meaning to read for a while now, and that is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. So I actually follow Alice's YouTube channel, and I've been meaning to pick up one of her books for ages now, and I've also seen a lot of people recommending this as their favourite of her books. And after having a look into it, it sounds like a really interesting concept because the book follows a young girl called Frances who is an academic overachiever and sort of has always planned to go to a really prestigious university and then starts to doubt that path in life. And as someone who was always quite academic in school, it sounds like a really interesting concept to me, and because I've seen so many great things about Alice's work, I'm really excited to give it a read. So the next book I picked up was actually a little bit of a surprise when it arrived from Amazon, and that was The Distance from Me to You by Marina Gessner. So I had ordered this book to meet one of the challenges for the Booktubeathon, which was to pick a book that talks about something that you want to do, because this book is about hiking the Appalachian Trail in America, which definitely sounds like something I would like to do. So it sounded right up my street, and I'd never heard of it before, but it sounded really interesting, so I thought I'd give it a go. And when the book arrived, I found out it was written in German, which was a little bit of a surprise, but also quite a pleasant one, because I'm actually learning German at the moment. I'm definitely not fluent yet, but I am at the point where I could probably make my way through the book and understand most of it. It's probably a little project that I'm going to set myself over the next few months to chip away at the book, because I definitely couldn't read it as fast as I could read a book that's written in English, but I could probably make my way through it, and because it's about a topic that I'm definitely interested in, I'm excited to challenge myself to make my way through the book and see if I can actually get through a full-length book written in German. So I was quite pleased that it arrived and had been written in German, because if it had arrived and come in like Spanish or something, there's no way I could have read it. But because I'm learning German and understand the language a bit, I might actually be able to get through this book, and it'll be a pretty fun challenge if I do. So the next book that I picked up is one that I'd seen recommended by Ariel Bissett, and that is The Storied Life of A.J. Thilcree by Gabrielle Zevin. Now, for one thing, I'm absolutely in love with the cover of this book. It's like super autumnal reds and oranges, and I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. And I was also really interested in this book because to me it seems like a book about books. So the main character is a man who owns a bookshop and I think has recently lost his wife. But then a child is left on his doorstep and he sort of has to take her in. And it sounds like it could be sort of a really nice, heartwarming read. And again, I'm quite interested in books about books. I think that's such an interesting concept, especially because obviously I absolutely love books, and reading about someone who owns a bookshop should be really interesting. So I'm looking forward to this one, although I'll probably be leaving this one on my shelves until autumn, because it definitely seems like a sort of cosy, heartwarming autumnal read. So the next book that I picked up is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Now this is a historical fiction about two young children. One is a French girl and the other is a German boy, and the book is set in occupied France during the Second World War. And I think we follow the children sort of throughout their lives as they grow up and throughout their sort of wartime experience. It sounds super interesting, obviously seeing someone from both sides of the war, and I just think it sounds like a really interesting read. In terms of history, I've always been quite interested in the Second World War, so I should be really interested to read this, particularly because obviously as someone who's from England, a lot of the time when we study the Second World War we see it from the English perspective, so it would be really interesting to sort of read about it from a French and German perspective and see what that's like as well, so I'm really excited to get to this book. So the next book that I picked up is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Now this book is a little bit different than anything else I'd usually pick up. It's kind of like a sci-fi fantasy about a mythical lost city called Weep. I really don't know too much about this book, but I do know that everyone who's read it seems to absolutely love it, and there is a sequel coming out in the autumn, so I was really sort of determined to try and make sure that I read it before that, because everyone seems to think it's amazing. I definitely want to give it a try, and if possible have it read before the sequel comes out so that I can read it as soon as it's on the shelves. So the next book, or should I say collection of books that I decided to pick up, were the vintage Russian classics that look absolutely amazing. So this collection is made up of War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak, Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman, The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, and Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. So, of the Russian classics so far, the only one I've actually read is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, which I read last autumn and absolutely loved. Now, being an absolute chunk, it did take me forever to get through, but I did really, really enjoy it. It's all about sort of French and Russian warfare in Russia in the 1800s, and it was really, really interesting, and I absolutely loved it. So the copy of War and Peace that I owned last year isn't actually the prettiest. It doesn't really have a very interesting cover. And I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but because I loved it so much, I did want to find one that had a really nice cover. So whilst I was looking for a nicer cover, I came across this one and absolutely fell in love with it because it's absolutely gorgeous. And while I was looking for this cover, I discovered that the Russian Classics edition was a thing, and that there was a big collection of books that went together and looked absolutely amazing, and so naturally I just had to buy them. So the next one I'm planning to read is going to be Anna Karenina, because I absolutely loved War and Peace and really want to read some more Tolstoy. But my boyfriend has also read Crime and Punishment, and so I'm really interested to read that. And if I'm honest, all the books in the collection sound really interesting. They're sort of set over a wide period of time. There's one that is set in World War II, Life and Fate, which should be really interesting. And they seem really varied, but I decided to buy the full collection because I didn't want to sort of wait and find out that they'd sort of stop printing them or anything, because I wanted them all to go together on my shelves. So I'm definitely going to be making my way through them, even if it takes me a while, which I'm sure it will. But I'm really excited to make my way through some really beautiful books. So as well as the Russian classics, I also decided to buy myself another collection of books, and that was a collection of dystopians, which I think look absolutely gorgeous. They're super simple and a little bit sort of plain looking, but I think that's definitely in keeping with the sort of dystopian themes of the books, and they just look absolutely gorgeous. So this collection is made up of 1984 by George Orwell, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. So my boyfriend and I actually decided to buy this collection together because The Handmaid's Tale and 1984 are two of my absolute favourite books, and Brave New World is one of his absolute favourites, and so it just seemed like the perfect collection. We both want to get around to reading the ones in the collection that we haven't read yet, so we thought it would be the perfect collection of books to buy and leave on our shelves, that we can have a nice collection of books that we love and also get around to reading the ones that we need to read still. I'm really excited to finally get around to reading Brave New World because I've been meaning to do that for ages, and as I said, I absolutely love dystopians, and I'm also super happy to have two really cool and matching copies of two of my ultimate favourites, 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale. So the next book that I picked up was Salt to the Sea by Ruta Setes, and I'm pretty sure I probably said her surname wrong, but I tried. So this is another historical fiction set around the time of the Second World War about four sort of young refugees who I think meet on a boat trying to get through occupied Germany, and I've seen so many great things about this book. In fact, the woman who sold it to me at Waterstone said it was amazing, so I definitely knew I was making a good choice. I wanted to read a little bit more historical fiction, and as I said earlier, I'm really interested in the Second World War, so this one seems like a great book. It's relatively short, but seems like it could be super interesting, and I'm also totally in love with the cover of this book. I just think it looks absolutely gorgeous, and I'm really excited to give it a read. So the next book that I picked up is a little bit of a mouthful, and that is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Mary Ann Shaffer and Annie Barrows. So I don't know too much about this book, but I do know that it is about an author who has suffering from writer's block and starts writing letters to someone, and then I think begins to tell that person's story. It's a post-war narrative and it sounds really interesting, and the reason I picked this one up is because there's a new film out which stars Lily James, and she was actually in the BBC adaptation of War and Peace, which is actually what made me pick up that book in the first place. So I think she's an amazing actress, and I really want to have a watch of the film, but obviously I want to read the book first. It's relatively short, so I'm sure I'll fly through it, and I'm really excited to see what it's about. So the final book in this absolutely mammoth haul is Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. So I've been meaning to pick up another Daphne du Maurier book for a while because I'm a huge fan of Rebecca. It's one of my favourite books. I think it's amazing, but I've never read any of her other works, and so Jamaica Inn seemed like a great one to start with because it's a really dark gothic book from what I can gather, and it sounds really interesting. I was also really interested to pick it up because Lucy from Lucy the Reader had said that it was even better than Rebecca in her opinion, and that alone made me want to pick it up because if it can beat Rebecca, it must be amazing. So I don't really know all that much about it, but I know it's meant to be quite dark and sort of creepy, which Rebecca definitely is as well. So if it's anywhere near as good as that, I'm sure I'm going to absolutely love it. So that is the absolutely ridiculous amount of books that I managed to accumulate since graduating at the beginning of July. So let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you think, and also let me know which books you've been picking up lately. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time. So the next book, or should I say collection of books that I picked up, was the